Tony. Camacho Ada. Felix and Tony. Camacho Ada. They're the right reason for a new season. Together we rise.
Thank you very much for joining us. Good afternoon and half a day. Without further delay, I'd like to defer the virtual floor to our president, Ms. Liz Duenas.
Okay. Thank you, Governor Felix Camacho and Tony Ada, for being here with us today. The purpose of our town hall meeting was so that we can afford our 600 plus members to hear your point of views. I think we were pretty transparent in sending out questionnaires and getting your responses. Our town hall meeting will basically go over those questions. There's no hidden bombs. There's no other agendas other than to get your point of view. Right. And unfortunately, we just contacted the governor's office, and they stated that they did not give us a confirmed attendance for this event. It's unfortunate. However, you guys are here, and of course, we want to hear your points of view. I think next in line will be Monty to
Recording in progress.
The rules and guidelines.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And again, welcome, Governor Camacho and Tony Ada, for joining us today. I got some rules with the road. I'm not sure how pertinent they are when you're the only one answering the questions. So, but we'd like to just keep the responses to 3 minutes, and you're welcome to choose which one of you would like to answer the question. Obviously, if one of you answered the question, I'm pretty sure the other person has the same opinion. So we'll give you 3 minutes for an introduction with your full name, your brief background, why you're running for the position, and on each question, 2 minutes. And when you come within 15 seconds of the end of the 2 minutes, Peggy's background will turn yellow. And when your 2 minutes is up, it'll turn red. It won't look quite as, it'd be redder than those roses behind her. So there's the yellow, and that's the red. There you go. Yeah. That's pretty much it. At the end, we'll give you a few minutes to do closing. We want to thank you very much. Obviously, you've got lots of experience. You've done this numerous times before, so we won't belabor you too much. And the chairman of this election committee is actually John Duenas, so I turn the floor over to John.
Thank you, Monty. I was going to say we could have a game of charades here, where maybe not charades, but a double identity. I know when I go out and play golf, sometimes I play against myself, and I'm JC and I'm JD, and so I was thinking maybe you could respond for the other side, but we won't do that because that won't be fair. Anyway, thank you very much for
You're welcome, John.
Appearing and for addressing our membership. We posed questions that we thought were very important and important to our membership, and we look forward to hearing your answers. I know we received your questionnaire filled out, and but now you have a chance to articulate that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I guess we can turn it over to Peggy, who will move on to introductions, right?
Looks like your time's up. It's already red, John.
Thank you very much. This is going to be just as valuable to all our realtors and all the other audience to hear our candidates that are here. So we thank you once again for taking the time. Please take a moment to convey your welcoming remarks, your opening remarks, up to 3 minutes each. And we'll start with our gubernatorial candidate, Mr. Felix Camacho, thereafter, Mr. Tony Ada.
All right, thank you. We very much appreciate this opportunity to appear before the Guam Association of Realtors, the GAR, as you will, and of course to answer questions regarding many issues that are affecting your industry. I find it, I very much appreciate the opportunity to appear before you. As a homeowner and together with my siblings as property owners in the market out there, we have fully felt the effects of it. And, like many others that have tried to build a house and have rental units and the like, we understand the challenges and difficulties out there. But at the same time, happy to contribute to this economy. I'm running because I felt a calling. I was happily retired, of course, being out of government for roughly 12 years, but having served 2 terms as a governor and 4 terms as a senator. But prior to that, my life had been in the private sector. And offering my experiences at a very critical time, I believe, in our history, where we have been through the most difficult of times with this pandemic and a total shutdown and lockdown of our economy and our lives, that I felt I had to step off the sidelines and offer myself with the many experiences I've had both as a lawmaker and as a governor, to come and serve yet again for the benefit of the next generation. I'm very much interested in mentoring and getting that next generation, the generation of promise, to step up and fulfill their will and purpose in their time. But with regard to the real estate and all, we're very happy to answer your questions today. I'll turn it over to Senator Tony Ada.
Happy day, everyone. Thank you to the Guam Association of Realtors for allowing us to be here today to speak with you about the different issues that that you presented to us on the questionnaire. As you all know, I've worked many legislations with GAR, and before introducing, I always come to get the input from the membership on the effects that the legislation would have, and the consequences, so that we can address it prior to introduction. I'm Tony Ada. I'm serving my 5th term as in the Guam legislature, and like Governor Camacho, we want to do what we can to effectuate policies that were placed in through the legislature, and now in the executive branch, taking those policies and working with it, but most especially working with you so that we can do what we can to make our island better for not just investors, but also for those who call Guam home. Home ownership, home rentals, apartment rentals, whatever it may be. That's what we want to do, is to work together with the people who are out there in the community that knows what's going on, what needs to be done, and how we can do it effectively together, so that in the end, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're just trying to work it so that the people of Guam will be able to benefit from it. So again, thank you for this opportunity to be with you and to talk with you, and we look forward to the questions that come forward and our answers to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to defer the first question to Mr. Christopher Felix.
Thank you, Governor, Senator. Increase in real estate tax rate for the properties with improvements valued at $1 million or more. As you know, Public Law 35-1 became law on March 2nd, 2019, to correct an error in the previous law created by the 34th legislature, to make clear that the law imposes an additional 100% tax levy on Guam real property with property improvement values at $1 million or more. This additional tax levy has created a severe financial burden to a certain class of property owners, and most especially to residential and commercial tenants whose rental spaces happen to be in buildings valued at $1 million or more, being that the additional cost of the tax levy will most surely be passed on to the tenants. And the question is, will your team introduce or support legislation to repeal this law?
Well, I'll begin, and of course, Senator can jump in. But I don't believe that the general public had any idea of exactly how unfair this tax is to residential property owners and also to commercial tenants. As you know, for example, a condominium complex with 10 individually owned units is valued at $2 million, for example, in the real estate. It's assessed on the value of the complex, while the payment for the taxes is divided among, say, the 10 individual owners. In this case, each unit is valued at $200,000. So the inequity of this situation is that each condo owners are paying taxes on the $1 million, as opposed to an individual owner of a single family detached home at $200,000. And so we feel that it is absolutely unfair, and there is a definite need to perhaps if legislation is introduced that would, again, repeal this law, we feel that it is absolutely necessary. We would support this. And of course, the impact upon multi-family residential units has been unfair. Retail space, we felt it ourselves, being owners of retail space, our tenants, we'd have to pass on the cost of that. And it definitely had hurt in a very difficult time when there were lockdowns and shutdowns. Our tenants would not be able to pay rent, but still we had to pay the banks and we have to pay the government. So there is a definite need to understand the impact that this has had and repeal it.
Yeah,
Senator? Yeah.
And this is what I was talking about in the very beginning on our opening statement, where, putting forth legislation to the association prior to introduction so that we know what the impact would be and not backpedaling now where, we're saying, oh my goodness, look at what it's done over the past couple of years. But as Governor Camacho said, we will look at repealing this, and this is something that should be repealed, and it's not there's no equity in it for anyone, be it condominium owners, apartment owners, or even commercial establishments. And perhaps the repeal of this law would at least bring down some of the costs for rentals, or even on apartments and homes, and that's commercial space, and that's what
Absolutely.
we hope for.
Yes, and when I think of the property tax, it's at normally at about 0.5% of the assessed value of the land. The assessed value really is 35% of, according to our laws, of the appraised value of the property or the market value, and then typically there's an additional 1% on the value of the building. So with this new law, I think it moved it up to 7 1/18% of the value. So repealing of this will definitely help on rental rates for tenants and improve the situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that answer. And I'd like to find out if there's a follow-up question to this from our panelists. I see none. We will proceed to the next question from Mr. John Wayne.
Thank you, Peggy. In my other life, other than being a principal broker of a realty company, I'm also principal engineer of a consulting company, and I have firsthand view of the building permit process and how it can affect the success or failure of projects. So the topic is improving the building permit process. Property owners seeking to construct improvements on their property, as well as contractors engaged to construct such improvements, are confronted by a building permit application and occupancy permit process that, to date, is beset with unreasonable and unresponsive review periods, sometimes unresponsible or unreasonable, inconsistent and shifting permit requirements of certain review agencies, and in particular, certain individual reviewers, and a frustratingly linear review process. It seems that no one, individual or commercial enterprise, is immune to the adverse effects of the current building permit application and occupancy permit issuance process. The question is, how will your team improve and expedite the building permit application and the occupancy permit issuance process?
Thank you for that, John. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to just make mention that we will give the candidates 2 minutes each to answer, as you please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, John. With as much technology as we have today, especially over the past year and a half with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's amazing that we don't have a process down yet to implement expedited permitting clearance process. However, when we look at what we want to do, I think we need to look at all the departments and agencies and see where is it that they're lacking, and that's where the expertise of like yourself, you know what it takes to go to Department of Land Management or Department of Public Works or Parks and Recreation. If there's a certain permit that doesn't need, for example, if you're doing a renovation inside the mall, I don't believe you need a permit, a clearance from Parks and Recreation or Department of Agriculture. I mean, we need to start streamlining these processes down so that what we want to do is only make those that are applicable for clearance that the person would have to go through. And the other thing is, what we can also do is build or have a more effective one-stop permit center. And what we need to do is put the personnel that have the experience in those different agencies and departments, put them forward so that they can be doing this process simultaneously so that the process works faster. And if we can also try to work with the legislature, and that's what we want to do, is work with the legislature, that currently if you send down your rules and regulations to the legislature, and the legislature does not act in it by amending, rejecting, or approving, then it automatically gets approved within 45 days. So that's something that maybe we can also look at, that if an agency or department has not approved that process in 30, 45 days, whatever it may be, then, it moves on. It's automatically cleared and moved on to the next department.
Okay. Well, I think the question laid out all the problems that the building permit review process is slow and unresponsive. And anyone who's known, it's well known among contractors, engineers, property owners, anybody who's had to experience this permit process knows that there are many problems. But what happens again when there's all these delays of the issuances and they're unreasonable is that these economically beneficial projects are delayed and end up costing the more than what was originally budgeted. Also, as you wait for the occupancy permit, these construction improvements are sitting there and become a target for robbers and vandals that would destroy it. Then there's also the physical, personal, and spiritual enjoyment provided by completed projects that are delayed. You can ask developers and homeowners how they suffer just waiting for these things to happen. And then the government itself suffers in the fact that the receipts of revenues that can be generated by completed projects are further delayed. So the economy suffers, the people suffer. Now, we all know that this permitting system exists to protect and to serve the public. The protection is provided by adherence, of course, to our current and reasonable construction codes, our policies, and practices. But the service aspect of it is what belongs to the government of Guam. And so when that system is inefficient and unresponsive, the service that the public deserves is poorly delivered. And so how can we fix this? Number one, I know that they've implemented a new digital tracking system. Give it a chance to work itself out, Secondly, establish standards of performance for the permit reviews and issuance, including mandatory time limits for the review of permit applications and issuing of occupancy permits. Third, we can establish procedures for dealing with what are considered to be problematic applications. Now, and what is defined as problematic, there should be a solid justification for that designation. It should be grounded in perhaps a code violation or an illegality. And then for those that are processing these permits, if the permit applications, if there's anything, they need a quick feedback on any problems so that they can resolve it. Also, you know, I think that we need to begin to consider outsourcing of the review of permits, if you will, you know, to qualified consulting firms in some form of a public-private partnership. We also should provide more resources for the building and permit review system. Thank you. I know my time's up, so thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask if there are any follow-up questions before we proceed.
I have a follow-up.
Okay.
I am just wondering, as far as development goes, do you have any comments on the situation that in and around the SHPO and some of the what we consider sometimes to be the unreasonable demands or requirements the SHPO puts on developers that wasn't factored in to the cost, and all of a sudden, you know, you're going from $10,000 to $100,000 worth of things, requirements that you'd never even considered you'd have to do. Thank you.
I can take a crack at it.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, we've heard many concerns about the SHPO and the unreasonable demands they put on individuals or developers that are pursuing things. We've also heard a lot of complaints about Guam EPA and the process that goes on there. I've come to know that over time, you know, when individuals are given a certain responsibility, if they're not mindful of their duties and responsibilities, they take this responsibility and begin to lord over it. And you know, you've got to have proper management in place that if someone is out of line or unreasonable, there's certain guidelines that by which they ought to adhere to, and there's a certain amount of reasonableness, and there has to be a consistency in the application of the rules and regulations. Secondly, many a time there are rules and regulations that have been put in place and nobody even knows the source of it. Where did it come from? How did it originate? Was it a memorandum? Was it a decision made at the executive level by the director or an agency head or department head or section head? Is it codified in law? Was it an executive order? So I think there's a real need to go back and take a look at, you know, the whole concept of we do this because we've always done it. This has always been the process. We need to transform our way of thinking and accept the fact that this is an opportunity to change things. You know, they say you never put new wineskins to an old wineskin. You got to put it into new skins, otherwise it's going to burst. So coming in, we want to be able to look at what works, what's efficient, and the real identification of where the problems are from those of you, the applicants that face this day in and day out for every project. You have a clear definition of what the problems are, and you probably have a pretty clear idea on what ought to be implemented to bring about the change that services all. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And our Senator Ada, would you like to answer that too?
You know, I agree with the governor, and you know, those issues that are at SHPO, you know, and once again, these are things that we need to go back to the legislature at and ensure that all these the processes that are going through, that if they're not codified, then you know what, if it's done by executive order, let's repeal that executive order. Let's look at ways to streamline the process so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just continue to roll with it and ensure that the process, it will be a much smoother, easier permitting process for those that, you know, especially when time is of constraint, when, you know, just by holding a permit back for 30 to 60 days could cost, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. And that's not what we want. We want investors to come here and know that when they move their paperwork forward, that they will be able to get it done in a timely manner without additional costs to them.
If I may, can I just add? Can I add something? Another thing that many have complained about is the fact that if there are problems and difficulties with their application, from whatever regulatory agency there is, that if a complaint is made to that individual or processor's superior or boss or director, I've seen it even go up to senators and even to the office of the governor, there's going to be a price to be paid, and they'll give you even a harder time and delay things, and there's some price to pay. That is something that we really need to take that practice of out of it, where if you have a legitimate complaint and you complain about it, you're going to pay the price. And secondly, we also know that, if you know somebody within the system, if you know somebody within a particular agency, if you talk to them, maybe you can move the process along. But this form of favoritism, because you know somebody, can be a cause of concern, because it could lead to some form of corruption. It could favoritism and the like. And if we just bring about equity, fairness, and doing what is right and just, everybody does their job, they stay in their lane, a lot would be accomplished. And we want to bring this mindset, this attitude of service to the government that is supposed to protect and provide the public service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Mr. Carl Peterson. After that, that would be Mr. Chris Felix, and then Elizabeth Duenas. These are all follow-up questions to the original one about the improving the building permit process.
Okay.
Glad to hear that you folks are mentioning that, in effect, capital is fungible. It'll go anywhere where there's a friendly environment, where the tax policy is not going to take all their profits, and that where the profits is repatriated to the investor, because time is money, and
right,
like Mr. Ada said, it could cost that project, if it's a big project and you're sitting there for a month, 2 months, or 6 months, or whatever before you get any action on it. Well, that's the investor's got to have the capital ready to go, and it's just sitting there doing nothing. So it's a lot of cost. Second thing is we haven't mentioned recording fees in land management. I don't know how many of you have had trouble with recording deeds, but we do financial planning, so there's a lot of deed recording in transfer to a living trust, for instance. And getting through land management, first of all, you got to go in and get an appointment to see them to record the document. That's just to record it there. It's not to record it as a final deed, because there's a committee that does that. Just to record your paperwork, you need an appointment, and that could be several weeks from the time you went there to get the appointment. And people are really frustrated with the system when they have to wait that long to get in there to record the paperwork. So there's a lot of things that impact development, and a lot of things that impact actually tax revenues to the government. In the long run, it's tax revenues to the government, and the government is stopping it. So like getting occupancy permit. We had a case once where they said, well, you have to go over there first to record, get them to sign first. Well, I was over at GWA, so you drive from Public Works over to GWA, and then you get there, and they said, oh, no, Public Works has to sign first, not us. And then you go back to Public Works and says, no, absolutely, they got to do it. And you're running back and forth, they can't decide who has the authority to sign stuff. It's just a frustrating system. And if you're new to the island, or you're building your first house, one or whatever it is, you can't stand that. So just keep that in your quiver there when you have a chance.
Yeah. And I think it really speaks to the fact that the process is linear. One agency first, then the next, and then you gotta circle back when there really ought to be a simultaneous permitting process where every agency is working on their set of plans individually and collectively, and then that should straighten things out. So there's a definite need to overhaul the permitting process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does Senator Ada want to provide his comment as well?
And I think Governor Camacho has already mentioned it, and then we're going to continue to work at this, and we're going to continue to strengthen the process, and also the what is going to be the best solution for this permitting process issue.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And the next question will come from our next follow-up question to the permitting process will come from Mr. Chris Felix. Then we have our President Liz Duenas after.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. Carl was talking about the problems with buying it, owning it. John's talking about building it. My problem picks up after that with managing it. And that what I'm talking about is business licensing and renewal of the business licensing. It's just, it becomes absolute insanity. And we just, the very similar problem of dealing with different government agencies. Every time someone buys a project, they have to go back in and get a whole new business license, which means inspections from Public Works and from Fire Department. 60, 90 days where the government, is going to lose the GRT, the business, the BPT. You're going to lose it because I'm going to be renting my place and I'm not going to pay till I get my license because I can't. It's that kind of silliness that where you lose, I lose. And then every year I got to renew my business license. Mm-hmm. Every year, I do about 200 business license renewals because of what I manage for all the people, and every year the same. Where you go to gross receipt tax and they say you didn't file January 1983. You have to get January 1983 GRT filing. It's 2022. Can we kind of put an end to the? Can Revitax say if it's more? No, you can't ask for things every year the same thing, and I got to keep digging it up and handing it to you. Those kind of things where we can streamline, get things simpler and easier. I don't mind paying my renewal license fees. It's just the length and the breadth of all of this. Thank you. Sorry.
Very good point. Automatic renewals, extended terms instead of annual. We should extend it out 2-3 years. There's many things that perhaps we can all work on and look at other jurisdictions and how they do things right. We don't need to recreate the wheel. Let's take lessons learned elsewhere and make things more efficient and streamlined. I agree.
Thank you very much. And I think our final follow-up question will come from our President, Liz Duenas.
I'm sure both of you may have had this discussion, but I'd like to hear it from you about, people who are running around trying to get permits. Time is limited, projects are waiting, yet they're presented with COVID hours, as Chris has brought up, and maybe Carl. COVID hours, people working out of the home, people not showing up to work. It's ridiculous. We're past COVID. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you have a game plan to deal with getting people to work or get the heck out of government, get into the private sector, because if you were in the private sector, you'd be out of a job. Mm-hmm. And so I hope you have a game plan to address the people that aren't working yet getting paid. The private sector is breaking their backs trying to make ends meet, and yet the government sector has issues that have not been dealt with.
Well, Liz, you have a very good point there. It seems, again, where I think we go back to the emergency declaration, which dates back to March of 2020. We're 31 months into what is now a state of emergency. And, I think it's Dr. Shea that said, well, if the point of staying in a state of emergency, medical emergency, is for more money, then, we'll never get out of it. It just seems that after 2.5 years, going on 3 years, that the government of Guam has been shut down. They're in a comatose state. They've got to get back up and working in it. I do understand, as you said, even when you go to DPW for the permitting section, you've got to sign in a log sheet, and then you got to wait outside for your number to be called. And then when your name or number is called, you would eventually go in, and everybody's standing behind a shield. And sometimes there's no one else in there, and you wonder, why were you waiting outside? So we've got to get out of this mindset and of this state of emergency, because obviously it's no longer the case, and get back to work. The private sector's been struggling, and the challenge has been this, like one individual on the street said to me, there seem to be people are, at least employees and organizations are living in different worlds. If you're working for the federal government, or if you're working as a Department of Defense as a full-time employee or active duty, you're going to get your paycheck every 2 weeks. If you work for the government of Guam, they've been able to find ways, of course, with the budget process passed and the moving of money around, that you were told to go home, not come to work, and you're going to get your paycheck every 2 weeks. But they said if you're in the private sector, man, you've been told to go home, not go to work. How many hundreds, if not 1,000+ businesses have been shut down, have gone bankrupt. And people have, even those that are employable are saying, well, why go to work when I can stay home and get more money from these federal benefits and monies than if I went in and worked full time. So we've got to get out of this malaise and this stupor and a bit of a comatose state that we have, and get back to recognizing that we're here to serve the people. And that's what Gov Guam is supposed to do, is they are public servants. And so the reality of it is that the governor still keeps us in this state of emergency to milk the system. I mean, when you think about the carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt that was here, what did she say? Yeah, we're milking the feds, and we're milking them really hard. And so if you're staying in this, it's no longer a medical emergency or state of emergency. It's really done for political purposes and financial purposes. The authority of a governor, when they're in this state of emergency, and the executive powers that they have and authority is tremendous. And they've certainly used it to their advantage. When you think of the political season which we're in, it's very obvious what's going on out there. But we've got to get the people back to work, especially Gov Guam and those in the service areas, regulatory services also. Yeah. Thank you. Senator?
Thank you, Governor. Gov Guam needs to, the governor has declared that the state of emergency for public health is only to ensure that Gov Guam will be able to avail of the funding, SNAP and things like that, keep the National Guard on point. No one's wearing masks any longer. There's no more social distancing. There's no protective barriers. We need to open up our agencies back to normal operating hours so that our community can come back and start making a living again. Because the longer that they continue to hamper the ability of the private sector to get back to normal, that is going to continue to deplete the tax base revenues of the government, because there is no longer federal funding, ARP funding that will be coming in. And, unless we start building up our tax bases from the private sector, we're going to see a very difficult time in the near future. And all this should have actually been done 6, 8, 12 months ago. So we need to get our government back online and continuing to operate at normal operating hours and extended hours if necessary to catch up what is been backlogged over these past couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next question will come from our president as well regarding housing shortage.
Okay, Guam has experienced a severe housing shortage due to a variety of reasons. These include rising costs of construction, labor and materials, rising mortgage interest rates, construction loan interest rates, the unresponsive and stifling building permit application process, lengthy, cumbersome land use permitting process, increasingly restrictive environmental regulations, and constraints placed upon local housing developments by competing and more lucrative military construction contracts and H-2 visa labor restrictions. What executive branch actions or policies will your team implement with commitment and purpose to address and resolve Guam's severe housing shortage?
I can begin by just stating that I know that one area of concern is those with the moderate income families that have been having a difficult time in being able to afford to purchase and buy or build their homes. I know that right now the mortgage rates with the banks, there have been increases. 30 years fixed at 6.69% right now. 15-year, I believe, is fixed at 6.02, and then you've got the 10-year adjustable mortgage rate, the ARMs at 6.21, and then the 15-year ARM at 5.59%. And with these rates, it really is not a good time for first-time homeowners, right, to go out and purchase at these rates. These are issues, of course, rates that are beyond our control, a result of what's happening in the federal government and under the Biden administration, the rate of inflation and the like. But I know that one thing that we want to really pursue would be what's called SUTA, S-U-T-A, the substantially underserved trust areas. With that kind of designation for Guam as a whole, it really provides for SUTA. Really, it's defined as an area or community lacking an adequate level or quality of service. And SUTA is, of course, a program under the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development. It provides infrastructure funding for many like water, wastewater, and other utilities. And this was part, I think it goes back to the 2008 Farm Bill. It is currently administered by the Rural Utilities Services, or RUS. And of course, the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture is the one who would determine what area has a high need for assistance. If we're able to get this designation for Guam, then I see that it will provide and authorize RUS to provide tools for us to finance improvements in our community. And with interest rates as low as 2%, so if we were able to then seek funding for rural electrification, that's one of the areas where there are direct and guaranteed loans. You've got high energy cost grants for GPA. You've got water and wastewater grants and guaranteed loans, and of course broadband direct guaranteed loans. So if we are able to do this as a government, would get these kind of funding and build the infrastructure for example, Chamorro Land Trust lands, and deal with all these other areas where you've got I think the groundwater protection zone, GPZ, that affects the descendant estates and parental subdivisions. We can help homeowners in that cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ada.
Yeah, he could have taken my 2 minutes too. Okay. You know, what we can also look at is what can we do to perhaps exempt BPT or use tax to contractors in helping to build homes on island. And I think that when we look at these issues, that if an individual that wants to build a home and the contractor can get the materials at the cost less the BPT or the use tax, whatever it may be able to make that home more affordable. And you know, these are programs that we also want to look into on helping the contractors or helping the developers or helping the realtors, you know, get these type of programs working and moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I'd like to find out from the panelists if there are any follow-up questions, please. I see Mr. Carl Peterson. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, none of us, at least those that are 65 or older, are living in their first house. You started out with something basic, and then you got. It's like driving in the dark. You drive as far as you can see, and when you get there, you can see further. And it's like starting with a new house, a beginner's house. So what I'm saying is that if we put out it's like selling GTA. You put out a bid, and how would you approach this? Give us recommendations and a way that you would participate in the bid process of building affordable homes that would meet the size standard and the basic requirements and et cetera. And you will get a lot of bids. There'd be a lot of people who would want to do that, but it won't be a castle. It will be a smaller house. And we get people started in ownership, and then they keep stepping up during their lifetime. But we start with something and then reduce the requirements that those contractors have to abide by, because they're providing a product or service that is really going to be helpful to us. There's a lot of things that can be done to help low-income housing, but it can't be with the golden slipper that you have to meet all the requirements in order to build the house. First-time homeowners will live in houses that are not as great as when they're 65.
Very, very good points. As we know, the territory is dealing with the cost of construction, the cost of shipping, the cost of goods and services, the lack of labor. We're dealing with homelessness and people out there on the streets. So there are many challenges ahead, and you're right, Carl. Is a single family dwelling unit the absolute starting point for first-time homeowners? Could we begin to think of building up? Could we think of the fact that land is very precious and difficult to come by now? How can we work with many families that have inherited property from their parents, grandparents, or generations ahead of them that are still trying to resolve these issues in court, in probate? System development fees when one is told how much they're going to have to pay for water and power to bring in, and sewer line if it's even available. Which is why I mentioned the SUDA program. If we're able to, as a government, get this type of financing available to bring in infrastructure in large tracts of land, for example, even Chamorro Land Trust land, and as you said, take the ideas of what is the best approach and how to build these, and could these be starter homes? I know even in the state of Hawaii and other places, they've even resorted to mini homes, and back in the day with Ken Jones, with the Butler type homes that he built in. I recall even in my day as a kid, we had the old Quonset huts that people had converted. Even my grandfather, Felix Camacho, where the GPO is located right now, he took these Quonset huts that were left behind by the military, got a plumber, got an electrician, got a carpenter, and converted these Quonset huts into residential units for rent. And many people that came to Guam from outside, from throughout Micronesia, looking for a job or a place to stay after the war, settled in. So there are many ideas that we need to explore, but the government doesn't have all the answers. The answers are there with the private sector and the creativity and the energy that you bring. So Tony and I would like to work collaboratively with the Association of Realtors, contractors, developers. And in my time, of course, we brought in low-income housing tax credits. We worked with Ironwood Development, and Mr. Ho came in under Cortec. These ideas we even brought to Saipan, and they've done it, I think, with Bob Jones and their organization. So we're open to thinking outside the box and looking for opportunities on how we can resolve this issue.
Yeah, and that's why it goes back to the experts once again, and that's those in the association, and pooling from you guys to the knowledge and resources and networking that you have that can help us to ensure that we're able to move the policies forward that we're looking for in not just affordable homes, but homes that are affordable for those who want to purchase one. I mean, I remember way back when they used to have the modular homes that Jones and Guerrero used to build back in the day. Is that something that can come back and, as structures for families to get them off the streets and into homes? And what is it that we can work with the federal government on insurance for those homes, or with it's just, there's so many things that we can do, but like I said, we just need the expertise of those that are in the business, and that's you folks, to help us to navigate this trail so that we can become successful in ensuring that people that want to have a home, that they're able to.
Yeah. And if I can just add, I've thought about bringing in, and I've attempted to bring in different types of technology and building materials and different building systems for residential houses. The first problem you're going to have is, what is the cost of shipping of these materials in? If it's not generated or manufactured on Guam, you've got a high shipping cost to bring in the raw material, first of all. Secondly, once you have that concept, is it insurable? Because if it's not insurable against typhoons and earthquakes and fire and the like, the banks aren't going to finance it. So, those are factors you have to include. The insurance industry, what is insurable, what is acceptable for the mortgage industry and the banks. And so there are many moving parts, as you all know, but we've got to continue to look for alternatives and ways to address this shortage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question will come from Mr. Monty McDowell regarding the BPT. I'd like to ask Mr. Monty McDowell to unmute, please.
Thanks, Peggy. This is the famous question on BPT. We raised it up to 5%, and it's just going to be for a short period. It's just temporary. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary classroom, And so we want to basically know, if the legislature was to pass a law that said, okay, let's repeal it, would you sign it? And if they wouldn't, if they don't even entertain it, would you try to write a law yourself and get them to entertain it, your law, and then sign it if they passed it?
Sure.
You're absolutely right. This was only supposed to be a temporary increase, and it was supposed to sunset and revert back to 4%. However, that did not happen. The administration wanted to keep it forever. And when you look at what the amount of revenues that was excess revenues that was made over the year, I mean, I believe that they were looking already at almost $100 million in excess revenues. That's off the backs of the people, and that is really unacceptable. Government should be in the business of servicing our people with the needs, but not making a profit off the people. And would we sign into law to revert it back to 4%? Absolutely. It's something that, Governor Felix and I have always spoken about, and that it was only supposed to be a temporary increase that needs to go back to 4%.
Thank you. The Governor, Camacho, would like to comment on that.
Yes, well, certainly we support this. We would have to take a look at what's happening. I know recently the government, or GIDA, in 2021, they refinanced a 2011 tax refund bond, and of course obligated the BPT as part of the original tax refund bond as a source of income. So there will be some pushback, definitely, with regard to arguments on whether or not this is acceptable and is it a violation of the bond covenants. But certainly is worth taking a look at, and as I've said, we do support it. As Monty said, on Guam, it's very common to think of something as temporary but permanent, but that's not the case. It was meant in a very difficult time, and then with the sunset clause, the governor had stated that this is forever. So I tell you one thing: if you want the BPT to roll back from 5 to 4%, then you have to elect Camacho Ada and get the current administration out, because they have absolutely refused to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any follow-up questions to this from the panelists? Seeing none, we will proceed to Ms. Joanne Ige regarding public and personal health and safety.
Thank you, Peggy. Continuation of the Public Health Emergency Declaration. The declaration of a public health state of emergency to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic was made in the spring of 2020. It is now the fall of 2022, and the state of emergency is still in effect. A bid scheduled to expire November 5th. The question is, discounting a year into the pandemic, which most people acknowledge as the public health emergency period, what is your team's position on the continuing extension of emergency powers into November 2022? Thank you.
Well, Senator, you can begin. All right.
Well, it's several times over the past year we've it was Bill 1136 that was introduced and passed by the legislature and vetoed by the governor, which would repeal the public health emergency. We tried to override it several times, and we were unsuccessful. There's valid reasons why to maintain the emergency. Could be the supplemental benefits for SNAP, the higher FMAP percentage for Medicaid, the use of the National Guard. But there's a problem, and it's the lack of transparency. We've been in this public health pandemic state of emergency since March of 2020. And we're already now in September of 2022. It just doesn't make sense why we continue to be in the state of emergency when I think we're already at 98% vaccinated, 99% vaccinated. Again, no one is wearing masks. There's no social distancing. People are having fundraisers. They're having activities. So, this emergency declaration needs to end. And, I wouldn't doubt it if it ends just before Election Day. Just my thoughts.
Well, I'd have to say really that I can understand the first year that you would be in a state of emergency with regard to public health, but it is no longer a response to what is a public health emergency. It is now turned into a political response for Governor Liu to continue this state of emergency now 31 months running, close to going on 3 years. It's as if when you think about even what Dr. Tom Shea had said, because she references the fact that this could jeopardize the SNAP monies, and the senator had mentioned also the FMAP percentages when it comes to Medicaid. So you can justify that, but those can also always be dealt with the Guam legislature and going to them and saying, all right, for this particular area, this is what we need it for, and declare it for that particular issue. But like Dr. Tom Shea said, if the purpose of a public health emergency is to get more money, then it should never end. And obviously, it has not ended. When you think of all that's going on right now politically, and let's put on our political lenses here and take a look at what's happening. with, for example, the road paving programs that are ongoing, not only are you looking at main intersections and main roads and main thoroughfares, which are definitely part of the 2030 Federal Highway Master Plan, but you're looking at even private neighborhoods with private easements that have been paved. I even asked one of the administrators of a particular neighborhood, how did this happen? Because in my time, we were asking your particular organization and ownership group for allowing us to come in and pave a particular road that services a certain nursery. But of course, the neighborhood would not want to give up the easements to the government of Guam, even for that. And so we could not do it with these private easements, and yet we see it happening time and time again. And so it is definitely used. You have to understand that the governor has a tremendous amount of authority and power when it comes to procurement, the moving of resources, the moving of personnel, as she said, that we have no say. Well, definitely the legislature has had no say. The Republicans have tried to make a change, but it didn't happen. And so it is really just a political response to what's going on, and she should end this emergency and get the government of Guam back to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will there be a follow-up question to this from the panelists? I see none. We're going to the question from the audience. It seems that this has been answered regarding the COVID-19 pandemic situation. May I ask the panelists if they have additional questions to our candidates?
I think we should move on to the next question, Peggy.
Okay. That would be coming from President Liz.
Okay, new public hospital. The present administration has determined that we need to construct a new hospital and that the site will be at the former Eagles football field in Manilo along Route 15. There is a debate in various sectors of our island community regarding the need for a new hospital facility rather than pursuing renovation, our existing public hospital. Furthermore, certain factions in the medical community disagree with the selected location. Since your administration must lead the development of a new hospital, what is your team's position on the following issues? Do you believe Guam needs a new public hospital, or do you believe renovating the existing hospital is more viable? That's number one. And then number two, do you agree that the football field, Eagles football field, as the preferred location for the new proposed hospital? And the question, if it's a yes, why?
Okay. Well, I'll begin. In my time, it's very interesting that we were able to, despite all of the physical challenges and the administrative challenges of the government of Guam with regard to Guam Memorial Hospital, we were able to get it JACO accredited for the first time in decades. And that was an amazing accomplishment. So when you look at what's happened over the last 3 years with this administration, they've let it crumble. And to the point where the only solution they have is, well, let's build $1 billion, what is it now, $1.4 billion hospital up at Eagle Field. Through the decades, GMH, which originally that location was owned by the Catholic Medical Center, it was then bought out by the government of Guam from the Archdiocese of Agana. I believe that a new hospital right now is a long shot. It is years away, and there's a lot of infrastructure that would have to go in, and there's at a tremendous expense. The immediate need is now. That is a very dangerous situation, at least with the physical structure of it for both the patients and the employees, and we have to come in, I believe, with an immediate fix to it. When you also think about all the ancillary services, all the clinics, all the everything related to healthcare, the Guam Surgery Center. When you think of all the different pharmacies, all the different clinics, the birthing centers and the like that are established in the Tumuning area in proper, and then you've got GRMC close by up north in Derrida. It is designed to serve in this particular area the entire island. So I believe that it is more viable right now to renovate and improve the existing facility, and in the short term think of or in the midterm and long term then begin to plan for an eventual move. But we still have the old site of Oka Tumuning, the old hospital point, that can supplement and augment the current location that we have right now. And why aren't we also looking at the repair of the central public health center up in Manilao? They've left it vacant after the fire. What have they done to improve the northern public health center and the southern public health centers to augment the services, healthcare services of our government and the hospital? So that's what I believe on question A, Senator.
Yeah, I agree with Governor Camacho and why we need to keep it in Tumuning, and renovating the current hospital, because when you look at reality, you're not going to build such a complex facility in 4 years, in 8 years. I mean, perfect example, Simon Sanchez has been on the drawing board for almost 10 years now, and still a shovel hasn't been turned to break ground and start building. And for us to even assume that we're going to build a hospital in the next 4 years, we need to actually start renovating the parts of the current Guam Memorial Hospital so that can be a safe hospital for doctors, for patients, and for the staff there at the hospital that are currently there, because they know they're not going to be able to move in the next 4 to 6 years. And that's why, yes, they may say that, renovating may cost more money, but when you look at what they did was they used the Army Corps of Engineers to I guess appraise what the cost or what the value would be to build versus renovate. And the last time I checked with the Army Corps of Engineers, it's you're building to military specifications. So you're not just building a regular hospital. You're building a hospital that what the military perhaps would their standards. So it would perhaps cost more than what a civilian hospital would cost. Look at GRMC. So, these are the things that we need to look at and reevaluate, and that's what Governor Camacho and I are going to do, is we're going to go back to the table and just get to it, get to work so that the people at the hospital will be safe.
The last part of the question regarding the hospital, what funding mechanism do you intend to pursue for the construction of a new hospital or for the renovation of the existing hospital?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is take that $300 million that's sitting in our bank and begin to apply it to address the many issues that we have, particularly the hospital, and in addition to that, public health and social services. I really feel that by saying I'm going to park $300 million in the bank and it's going to be reserved for the building of the hospital allows that financial institution to park that money in the Federal Reserve, has deposits earning right now 3.15%. That's justification to keep it there. We need to take that money out. It was intended to help the people of Guam, and one of the most important needs right now is the dire situation of our hospital. We can do a short-term fix and get that thing up and running, repair the maternity ward upon which there have been many concerns, the electrical panels that are ongoing, the HVAC system, and many other issues that may involve the structural. I think even the roof that's been cracked. And I mean, my gosh, if they cannot even fix a Ganya swimming pool and the Derrida swimming pool and get Simon Sanchez High School off the ground, how do you expect that they're going to build a brand new hospital up at Eagle Field that has no no infrastructure that's there to speak of that can support this. I mean, when I stepped into office in 2003, the first thing we had to do was harden the infrastructure by running a substation from GPA right above the Hilton directly to the hospitals, that in case of any emergency shutdown or typhoon, you've got your power source up and running. And so you need a hardened infrastructure. What are the costs involved in bringing this in? Has GPA given an estimate? Has GWA given an estimate to do that? In addition to that, you've got the original landowner situation for those that claim Eagle Field is theirs, that it ought to go back to them. In addition to that, you've got a proposed missile site for the THAAD, or the Defense System of Guam, close by in that same general area. And so these are many issues that need to be resolved. We haven't been privy to all the information that they've gotten, consultant reports on what's there, but when we get in, we have to take a look at it and make the best decision. But for now, I'm going to take that $300 million that she's got parked in the bank and use it for the benefit of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to find out from the panelists for additional questions. Yes, Mr. Monty McDowell, then we go to Mr. John Duenas.
Back during your first term, Governor, I was asked through the Chamber of Commerce to go talk to agencies about privatization of non-core competencies. You know, that there's certain things that are inherently government, certain things that aren't, but it's hard for the local government to let loose of things and put it in the hands of the private sector. Fear the loss of jobs, you know, that employee will end up in the private sector. Oh my God, that life has ended now, you know. So one of the agencies we went to and presented was Guam Memorial Hospital. And I can remember, I think it was David Simmons who was the manager of the hospital, and he wasn't interested, and he had a million reasons why it didn't work. Dr. Chris Perez was the chairman of the board, and he concluded the meeting by saying, if it was up to me, I would stand at the door with the pink slips and let every employee at the hospital leave, and we privatize the management of the hospital. And until we do that, the hospital will always run negative and will never be efficient and never properly take care of the people at Guam. So we could talk about a new hospital. We could talk about the old hospital. But if we don't change county hospitals, territorial hospitals across the nation, whatever you want to call them, government-run hospitals, just don't work. They've closed them down, and the private sector is, you know, GRMC has had its challenges. And, you know, it came to a pretty rough area to start a hospital. I maintained that hospital. I maintained Naval Hospital. A lot of it, you know, the privatization, you gotta run lean and mean. You gotta do what you gotta do. But the government doesn't gotta do what it's gotta do. It's just hard to change. Any comments would be appreciated. Okay.
Monty, I think you basically posed a very critical question, and from all you said, the question you're asking both Tony and I and the people of Guam is, should the government of Guam continue to be in the business of running and managing a hospital? Fortunately, we have GRMC that's privately run, and as you mentioned, you're well aware of having maintenance contracts on how things work. When the patient to employee ratio, the patient bed ratio to employee is pretty high for the government of Guam. I think it's double that of GRMC. I'm not sure or aware of what it is for Naval Hospital, but definitely that's one factor. I think another thing we need to think about too, we talked about a new hospital, would be should an opportunity come up for GRMC to be on the cell block, is that something that might be a possibility? And if it was, who should run it and maintain it? But definitely the efficiencies of things being privately run are there. I have to point to the success that we had when we took Guam Telephone Authority and privatized it. I was crucified. people were really upset, but we were able to find a way to transition their employees into the private sector, secure their retirement benefits, and work out another plan. But you look at GTA now, and they were able to be competitive. And the big challenge for them was, can we keep up with the pace of technology as a government agency with our procurement systems and all the challenges that we face? And the answer was no. So it made public sense to do that, or common sense to do that. And so when you look at the hospital, it has a mission to serve the people, and no one is turned away. But we've been at it now for 50, 60 years, and what are the lessons learned? We would certainly be open to thinking about different ways of doing things, and again, it's going to go through the legislature, through policymakers, the medical community, but we are open to looking at ways of doing things better and more efficient for the benefit of serving the people of Guam.
And perhaps, Governor, what it can be is starting out with a PPP, a public-private partnership, and eventually, seeing how that goes for a couple of years, perhaps, and then completely turning it over to be operated privately. Are those options off the table? Absolutely not. I think we got to keep an open mind in how we deal with healthcare in this day and age, and what is it that the government can and cannot do. And perhaps those are one of the things that the government needs to start to step away from and start out with a public-private partnership.
Thank you very much. I think the next follow-up question is coming from Mr. John Duenas.
Just an observation and then a final question. My observation is you kind of liken, if you look at the history of the government of Guam, you kind of liken it to a hermit crab. A hermit crab occupies the shell, but then when it kind of outgrows that shell, gets tired of it, moves on to another shell and just leaves that. You look at our pools, same way. You look at our public health center, same way. This has moved out. Many other examples. But my question is actually related to the study of the hospital, of the proposed new hospital up at Eagle Field. I don't know, I may be completely wrong about this. I don't know that there was an RFP out for that study. I understand it's being done by Matrix. And I don't know that they've engaged any local consultants to look at infrastructure. Maybe they have actually gone directly to the agencies. How do you know anything about how that contract was procured? And it appears to be done, but we don't know the results.
Could be it was procured under emergency procurement under the public health declaration. Remember, we've been in this for 3 years now, so almost 3 years, and perhaps that's the avenue they use to do the procurement for the that site up there at Eagles Field. We don't know that. I haven't even seen a plan for that hospital up at Eagles Field. Go.
Yeah, personally, I don't know how it was procured. I believe that the group you mentioned was contracted to do a study, perhaps I don't know if it would be called a feasibility study, looking at all potential sites for a hospital, whether it be up there in Manila at Eagle Field or the old hospital point at Oka Tamuning, the current site where the hospital is situated, or any other location. But we've not been privy to it. I just feel that perhaps the governor or the current administration wanted this to be a non-issue, and say, well, if the report is ready to go, just put a muzzle on it until after the election. But if there is one, it would be very, very wise, because that's money spent. I'm sure it's going to be a good amount of money spent on a study of that importance that the people of Guam need to see and understand, and the community, of course, the medical community and others would have to review this. John, and there's a definite need to consider the fact that there is so much expertise on this island with local firms too, that that we need to engage. Because of the understanding of all that happens on this island, the history of things and how things are developed. So we need to first of all, anyway, get to that study and present it to all the experts out here also for their input, and then make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those answers. I'd like to entertain a couple of questions from the audience. First one is, do you have any plans to increase the infrastructure of Guam, sewer, roads, other utilities, so that much of our undeveloped land can be utilized? If so, what would be the timeline and plan to development and fund these improvements?
Well, I want to begin by just reiterating and going back to what I talked about earlier with the sustainable, or SUTA, which are substantially underserved trust areas, designation that could be given by the Department of Agriculture, the Secretary, and of course administered or run by the Rural Utility Services. If we're able to get this designation, and if we haven't already, it provides a funding source of less than 2% for infrastructure, whether it be water, wastewater, power, telecommunications, and the like. If you understand what's going on with any kind of development project, especially whether it be private sector or government of Guam, I would like to take those and apply it to the areas of Chamorro Land Trust, where lands have been given to recipients that benefited from this, but there's no infrastructure in place for them to develop it. If we're able to get this kind of funding at a low interest rates, and then put in the infrastructure, dealing with both GPA, GWA, and other telecommunication companies to bring in, lay out the roads, and do a planned development with Chamorro Land Trust lands, it would benefit the homeowners, because the system development fees that you got to pay right now for power, for water, for sewer, for roadways is extremely expensive, and that's a cost that's borne by anyone interested in building a home, or any developer, which drives the cost up, and people wonder why are homes so unaffordable. It's because of our fees and the cost of putting in infrastructure. So qualifying for SUTA, going after these low interest loans that are even direct grants or guaranteed loans is one way to fund the infrastructure development. And once you lay that foundation, then you can begin to build. Thank you.
And there's still more federal funds that are coming in with the infrastructure bill that was passed and signed. So that will continue to allow us to improve on water systems, or even roads, continuing of fixing the roads and bridges. So that's what we look forward to as well, and looking how it be able to benefit the people of Guam, and not wait until an election year to push those things out. We'll get those things out immediately when we get into office.
Yeah, I do want to mention also that one of the largest ever civil utility projects undertaken on Guam is just occurred up there at the Northern Treatment Plant, to service not only the buildup of Camp Blas and that military marine base, but also to service the northern and central part of Guam. Tremendous. So when we look at the collaboration and the partnership, and that was funded by the federal government, Department of Defense, we have to look at other opportunities. I've always said that the buildup is coming, and there's 1.2 to 2 billion a year for the next 10 years that's happening. Many opportunities for jobs and the like, but we need to find ways of collaborating with the military community to be inclusive and not exclusive, and for the benefit of not only the Department of Defense, but the people of Guam. So I'll be looking for many opportunities together with the Senator to provide these type of projects and provide the infrastructure needed for Guam. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Another question is, what will you do moving forward to ensure you are serving all of our island, and not just for the benefit of Republican or Democratic parties?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear the question.
Yes. What will you do moving forward to ensure you are serving all of our island people and not just for the benefit of Republican or Democratic parties?
You know, when Governor Camacho and I first got together, it was on the premise that we serve all our people, because we've seen what this past several years has done by separating, by pick and choosing, by isolating our people, and it was truly devastating. When Governor Camacho and I get into office, we're going to be in office for the people that elected us, the people that voted for us, the people that did not vote for us. We're going to be there for everyone, because everyone deserves the leadership of Camacho Ada, a leadership that's transparent, that is accountable, and that will be there for them when they need us.
Yeah. I do want to quote the good Senator Frank Uggan, and he says, it's always people before politics. Mm-hmm. See, because once you get into office, you're accountable to everybody. Whether they voted for you or not, you're there, and you're there for 4 years at a time, and you've got your work cut out for you. So Tony and I have always understood that the cause is greater than Tony and Felix. The cause is greater than the Republican or Democrat Party. The cause is for our people and this island that has gone through a tremendous time of suffering and shutdown, where their lives and their freedoms have been taken away. They've been segregated. They were told to wear a mask. They were told to get vaccine. They were told to stay home. Don't go to church. Don't go to school. Don't go to work. And we've suffered tremendously. What took 50 years or 60 years to build up was crushed in 3.5 years. And so it's going to be a process of restoration. And you can't just pick and choose, well, they're a supporter or they're of this party or that party. No, everybody's in this together. And so we're there to serve because it's a greater cause. It's more than just he and I. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to serve all the people. So people before politics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have reached the end of our town hall, and we'd like to ask both to communicate their closing remarks up to 3 minutes. Thereafter, I will defer it to our election chairman, Mr. John Duenas, and then our overall chairman, Mr. Monty McDowell, and our president will close. Thank you very much.
You want me to go first? Well, to the Guam Association of Realtors, thank you so very much for having us here today. As you can see, Felix and I are working for the people. Felix and I will be there for the people. You can rest assured that with the Camacho Ada administration, you'll see transparency, you'll see responsibility, you will see accountability. We're here for everyone, and that's what you can see from us. I mean, we're Felix and Tony, and we showed up. So, we hope that you give us the opportunity to serve you, serve the people of Guam, and serve our island so that we'll be able to move forward from this devastation of these past couple of years and start to rebuild our community, start to rebuild our families, because we need to start with our families first and start to build them up so that our community can build as well before we start inviting all our tourists to come back. We need to get our island back to what it was prior to the pandemic, and even better. I don't think there's even a plan to open up our island. So, we're going to have this plan to open up our island and bring our tourists back, bring our families back who have decided to leave island for the States or wherever they went, all those families, so they can come back and say, you know what, I wanted to raise my family on Guam, so that's where I'm going back, because things are getting better. There is hope. So there is hope for our future on our island. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to the Guam Association of Realtors for this wonderful opportunity to answer the many tough questions, and even after, following questions that you've presented to us. I really believe that we're here. It's a new season. It's a new season of hope. It's a new season of restoration. We've got to revive this island again. I mean, it was basically comatose and shut down. So we've got to again build the foundation upon which those that follow us can prosper. There will be tough times in the world, as you see ahead of us. All that's happening, wars, rumors of wars, economic upheaval, a lot of change in leadership that's happening. I think even in the nation as they go through this midterm election. But we are part of a great nation, the nation of the United States of America. And Guam is a territory in that. We're playing our part. But we stand here right now and are going to be ensuring that we put people before politics. It's a wonderful privilege for me to step out of retirement and come back and offer myself as a candidate together with a man that I've really come to respect and admire, Senator Tony Ada, together with our wives, Joanne and, Annette, that are there. You've got a team, of people that are completely dedicated. And if any of you know them, they're going to give their heart and soul alongside us to serve. It's an opportunity to look at the leadership in Washington, an opportunity, again, to perhaps change the leadership in the Guam legislature. But you've known me. I've been able to collaborate and work with all. I am always open to ideas together with Tony, and we're here to serve. I'm just humbled, and I have done it before, and I will do it again. And lessons learned, wisdom comes with age. So I'm looking forward to this. No, I'm not that old yet, though. But I just have a real desire to come out and serve again. There's a greater cause, and there's a new season. Please vote Camacho Ada. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. John Duenas?
Thank you, candidates. You had the whole platform to yourselves this afternoon, and you took great advantage of it. Thank you for your answers. We wish you good luck on the campaign.
Thank you, John.
And hope to see you on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Governor and Senator, it's a real honor to have you be with the Guam Association of Realtors. We have lots and lots of people not on the screen from the Guam Association of Realtors that were here listening to your every response. Very articulate. We're proud of both of you for stepping forward and running to serve the people at Guam. Done it before, you're willing to do it again. So thank you. And off to Liz Duenas, our president.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Senator Tony Ada, for appearing on behalf of our 600 plus members. I want to thank you again, Sidus Masi, and wish you the best of luck. God bless that you make it into office. It's unfortunate we were unable to hear Governor Liu and Josh Tenorio, but you definitely took advantage of the platform.
Thank you.
And again, the Guam Association of Realtors has always been vocal. Once you make it in office, we will be there right next to you, giving you our feedback, input. And of course, I think the same sentiment. It's all about our community, making a difference, and not about personal issue or ego.
Right.
Working together to make things happen and making a difference for our community. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi. Thank you.
Felix and Tony. Camacho Ada. Felix and Tony. Camacho Ada. They're the right reason